What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I figured I'd talk on a subject matter that's getting quite a lot of debate right now, and that is the subject of metabolic flexibility. Now, what exactly is metabolic flexibility? Well, I would define it as one's ability to be able to switch from carbs and glucose to fat and ketones and vice versa pretty efficiently without any adverse effects. So if you're not keto adapted and you've been eating carbs for extended period of time, it's safe to say that you are not metabolically flexible. You would have to undergo a dip in performance when you would adopt a ketogenic lifestyle. Now, if you're ketogenic and you've been keto adapted for quite some time, you could in theory switch back to carbs and glucose and function pretty efficiently, and then vice versa. Now, this whole discussion of metabolic flexibility has been super hot lately. It was one of the main items of discussion at the Metabolic Health Summit, and it seems to be just hot on everybody's lips. Everybody wants to obtain this metabolic flexibility, which is a worthwhile pursuit. You know, if you're especially if you're in a carbohydrate dependent state, like, it would be very appealing to you and it would behoove your health, your overall health, to be able to tap into fat as a fuel source. I'm not quite so convinced that it would make sense the inverse way of that, though. Like, if I'm, like, just using myself as an example here, I am keto adapted, I am fat adapted, I have been for the past 4 or 5 years. You know, I feel like if I was to just eat a huge carbohydrate based meal right now, probably get a little sick because my stomach's not used to it. But if I was to do that on a regular basis, my stomach would adjust and I would be able to use that efficiently for fuel. I don't feel like I would lose that machinery because glucose. The way, I'm not going to dive into the biology here, but if I'm keto adapted, fat adapted, and I consume a bunch of carbohydrates and glucose, my body has the mechanisms to use that efficiently. So that brings us to the discussion of, is it advantageous to include the carbs back into your diet if you are keto adapted? And I'm not really sure. I know what my personal opinion is on that, but I don't want to be biased and push that onto others. So I'm trying to have a very open mind here. And this is more a video of me just kind of putting myself out there and then honestly asking for y'all's opinion on it, because I'm curious to see what y'all's take is. I don't necessarily think that there'd be any benefit for me to reintroduce carbohydrates. Like, I've done enough different protocol. I've done enough variety with my food that I know what my body performs well with and does not perform well with. And heavy boluses of carbohydrates, even from clean sources like sweet potatoes, brown rice, whole grains, like those, still, even fruits, like those, just do not, I don't feel any benefit from them. You know, maybe now that I'm keto adapted as deeply as I am, if I was to reintroduce those, I wouldn't have the negative effect and I'd be able to leverage some benefit. But I'm not convinced that that benefit outweighs the benefit I'm getting from just being strictly keto adapted and not introducing those foods in the first place. Metabolic flexibility is a desirable thing. You know, that was of utmost importance when you're, living in a, archaic age and you have to pretty much eat what you have available to you. We're not in that time frame anymore. We have abundance available to us. Like, we have all kinds of foods to choose from. So there's no apocalypse going on right now. We don't have to limit ourselves to just what is available, because everything's available. So we have the discretion to be able to pick and choose what we want to eat and to pick and choose those based off of what we perform well with, because I look at food as a fuel source. And I'm not convinced that any benefit I would get from carbohydrates outweighs the benefit that I would get from being strict keto, like I'm saying. There's only one way to test that, though, right? Why do I not just jump into it and have a heavy carb based meal, have some sweet potatoes, have some brown rice, and then kind of play around and see how my body would respond? Well, let me tell you, I'm in the camp, as of right now anyways, that believes that, let me just back up. Every true success I've ever experienced in life has come from some degree, or primarily from some degree, of just consistent discipline. And I've been strict keto now for 4 or 5 years. Like I said, that exercises consistent discipline. it's come to the point now where I don't have any cravings for carbs. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything whatsoever. I don't feel like I'm losing anything from a performance standpoint by not having the carbs. I believe that the longer I stay strictly keto adapted, the more efficient my internal machinery becomes at leveraging and using those ketones and fat molecules for fuel. And not to say that having a carb meal that would kick me out of ketosis would hinder that. It probably wouldn't, in all honesty. But the mental fortitude that I'm building by being as strictly disciplined and consistent as I have been is worth more to me than any minuscule improvement in performance that I could potentially gain from introducing carbohydrates. And again, I don't think that I would gain any incremental performance, but it's not worth it for me to test out because I just know what I'm doing now is working really, really, really well. And I don't want to sacrifice that to kind of go backwards. And I'm all for self-testing, self-experimentation, biohacking. I've been preaching that for the past 4 years. So I'm all for experimenting. You just have to step back and look at your motivation for experimenting. If you're just trying to reach out and grab the next shiny new thing, then reevaluate what you're doing, because it's probably not worth it. If what you're doing is working really well now, then there's no sense in just moving to the next thing, and never really gaining any firm foundation with where you currently stand. If you have done everything already and you feel like you could gain some potential benefit from trying something new and experimenting, then by all means go for it, but make sure you're in the right frame of mind before you go for it. Now, a lot of y'all might think, why am I making such a big deal? It's just food, have a bunch of carbs, do whatever, it's all good, and yes, true, I don't want to make this a huge ordeal over food, but honestly, y'all, one of the main reasons I started doing the ketogenic diet was to get over the eating disorders that having a whole bunch of carbs and having that carb addiction brought into my life. And that alone is reason enough for me to stay keto and strict keto. But in being so strict keto, I've recognized that there is an inherent benefit in having that discipline and consistency and being strict keto for as long as I have been. The longer you're strictly adapted, the more efficient your body becomes. That's what I believe. And for me, it's not worth sacrificing that to tiptoe back on what I tried to move away from in the first place. So this is my little rant on metabolic flexibility. This is me saying that I'm very curious about where the research and the science will show. This is hot on my mind right now, as it is everybody else's. So rest assured that I'm going to keep digging and seeing what I can find out. If you have anything, any articles, any evidence that points one way or another, feel free to email that to me or shoot it to me. I'd be happy to read it. But yeah, this is mostly just a vlog giving my view on the matter, and then kind of saying where I'm coming from, and then just cautioning you to think strategically and recognize that there's a benefit from discipline and consistency, and you don't want to just fall to the shiny new object syndrome, but that experimentation is key. That's how we grow. So those kind of compete with each other in a sense. Anyways, that's all I got. See you tomorrow.